Our first time doing this on a 2-in-1 camera situation where Kelley did not call in. We actually just showed up at her studio and here we are. So we know that Jerry is sending this link to our chat of our original live. So please, all 20 of you, 30 of you, be patient. We're coming and we do have so much to share with you, and it's going to be great. So as soon as I get the heads up to Jerry that we have had this shared with us, then we will dive right in. And God, look at the gorgeous art behind me in the meantime. I mean, come on. I am in the mecca of the woman that knows how to make incredible art, and feel very fortunate to be here. Right, Kel?
Right.
What else you got to say, Kel?
This is so much fun. It's kind of fun to see the behind the scenes thing too.
Oh.
You know, that these guys roll with anything. It's so lovely.
Oh,
It's really lovely. And thank you for your patience in rolling with us. And we will get, back to our regularly scripted program.
Scripted, exactly.
Where we're talking about what we're supposed to be talking about. But in the meantime, yes.
Oh, there you
studio.
are. We see the chat. Marguerite Trail says, there you are.
Yay!
Okay, Jared, should we go for it?
I would give them just another
Okay,
1
here,
more
they're
minute.
coming in. I see it.
Come
Oh,
in,
we get to
come
see
in.
the chat. Oh, this is going to
Nice.
be trouble.
Hi, you guys. Oh,
Hello.
yes. Look at that. We
Oh,
see
welcome.
everyone.
Welcome. Oh, this is
Ooh.
good.
Oh, well.
Oh, who
That'll
needs
be
a
fun to pay
script?
attention to.
Oh, thank you all. So sorry, but it's all because of Kelley's studio and our new technical difficulties. But
Yeah.
we are very excited to be here.
I'll take the full blame.
The wire, yeah, Kelley will take
It's my studio. It's cursed.
Oh my God, the lighting's beautiful. Our technical director is here now. He's got it all
working
together.
like a madman.
All right, so
We are undaunted.
we are undaunted. And just so you all know that there is one behind the scenes thing that had to change today. I had to put real pants on.
And thank you so much
Just
for
so
doing
y'all know, from the bottom
So
half, I am
appreciate
pajamas and slippers in most
Thank
of our
you.
lives.
Thank
but
you
today
for-
I got dressed up because I knew this was a
Yeah.
big deal.
Thanks for upping your game
So,
here.
on that note, I just want to say thank you all for joining us. And please, we see you're all saying hello from the chat, but tell us where you're from, because we really, really love to see where you're coming from. And real quick, a quick shout out to our friends in Hawaii. And please stay safe, and we hope these challenging times end soon and that everyone is going to be okay. But just thinking about all of you, and our hearts go out to you.
Absolutely.
So we also want to say how much we love engaging with our community, especially when I can sit right next to an artist. Even if I have 5 minutes of a little technical glitch, this is going to be such a blast to be in here with Kelley. I haven't been to the studio in like 10 years, so it's great to be back, and it's gorgeous. You guys are going to get a little tour around the studio, and you will be able to ask Kelley questions at the end. I do have Jerry, the technical amazing wizard, over here on my right or left, one of the ways, and he will definitely help us out here. So it's just great to connect with everybody, and it really inspires us to do what we do every day, and we're super excited. So as you know, we're on the road because here we are in Kelley's studio, and the last time we did this was in Ravenna, Italy with Luca Barberini and Coco Mosaico. So it's super exciting to be doing this again and doing it with you. This is so fun.
It's fun having you.
I know, and Kelley and I do go way back. We met in 2011 at the Austin SAMA conference when her and our good friend Erin Pankratz invited me to go grab a drink and get to know each other better. And literally the rest is history, and 12 years of history it has been. So I could go on and on about Kelley's illustrious mosaic career, but I'm gonna let her do that. You don't wanna hear me talk, you wanna hear her talk. And what I will say is Kelley has really inspired me over the years with her discipline, her focus, and her daily art practice that has really been an incredible thing to watch her art evolve, and it continues to evolve. And you are all the lucky ones as well, because she's so generous with sharing so much of it with all of you. So without further ado, Kelley Knickerbocker.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for coming. Thanks for tuning in. And we do plan to have a good time here, just talking about the new course, Power of
Yes.
One. but also, whatever you want to chat about in the chat, to ask questions or whatever. And I'm going to show you around the studio a little bit. So you can see some artwork and just how the studio looks. It's very tiny. It won't take long. But it's fun.
Oh no, I mean, look just behind us right now, please. I mean, I'm just like, oh wait, I want to look at that. I want to look at this. Just kidding. No.
Tami tells me the studio is it's pretty small, but it's bigger than their hotel room.
It is.
I'm having a giggle over that.
Yeah, but we're in the beautiful downtown Seattle area, so you want to be outside and seeing all the great stuff there is to see, eat, and drink. So this has worked out perfect, and it was really fun to be back here. And Kelley will give you a tour slowly around this incredible studio, and you'll learn about her storage, because a lot of people ask about Kelley's storage of her materials. It's super efficient. She has to stay organized in here because there is a lot going on. Plus, she has a studio mate who chose to take the day off. But that's okay. So we're all here in here, but I'm going to make Kelley tell me in a really, really short Cliff Note version, because some of you maybe are new to us, and Kelley, like how you got started, and then we'll immediately segue into leaving that career and what you're doing these days.
Okay. So I don't have any formal arts training. I didn't start out life as an artist. I always did crafty, arty things on the side, but never thought of art as anything that any sane person would do for a living. So it's just a thing you do because you love it, and you go out and find a real job. And so I did that, and I was working at the University of Washington for 25 years in administration, in federal compliance specifically. So not super thrilling, but learning how to be an adult with a job and manage a program and do all that stuff, and it was great. But after 25 years, I was ready to do something that just made my heart sing, and was more fulfilling on a personal level. So I'd never had any exposure to mosaics, but I was working in stained glass just for fun. And so that was the start of what can I do with stained glass. And it wasn't going to be stained glass, because I live 2 blocks away from Seattle Stained Glass, which is, you may not know, but it's huge, and it does, the majority of the glass fabrication and restoration here in Seattle. So that would be my competition, and that would be unpleasant. So I thought, what else can I do with this gorgeous material? And I saw a mosaic locally, and I thought, oh my gosh, that would allow me to keep working with this material. And so I Googled West Coast mosaic classes, and ended up at the Institute of Mosaic Art, and took a 1-week intensive with Laurel True, and knew that from then on that's what I would be doing. And the flexibility of it, the versatility of it, the fact that you can use anything as material, that all just that's never going to be boring. And that was true. Almost 20 years later, it's not boring yet. So I just, plowed right into it full time after taking a year to study with people like Laurel, who had a grounding in architectural mosaics, because that's what I wanted to do. And then the fine art thing just kind of snuck up on me. But I've been doing it full time since day one. And so a lot of time exploring. Again, I don't have a background in art or in construction. So learning a lot on the job, and figuring things out, and it becoming an exploration, not just to learn how to do it, but to learn all the amazing aspects of mosaic and materials, and just continue to explore. That's my goal. So that's what I do every day.
Exactly. And that's what I love. And did you have a business plan? Was there a I need to make this much money? Well, I never have in all of our businesses, because I don't believe in them.
I did not have a business
See?
plan.
That's what I wanted you to say. See,
I did not.
Neither.
See, no artistic education, no business plan. Go do, people.
Pure success.
But here's the thing. The longer that I do it, the more I wish I did. I wish I had some of those things, because I could have learned in a short amount of time what it took me a long amount of time to figure out on the fly. So for those reasons, I wish that I did have a 4-year at least arts education, and because I've had to kind of do that on my own, find that stuff and learn it. And also about business, which is not my forte, but here I am. plugging away.
You are, and we do. We are obviously just learning boots on the ground, and that's just what we do. And I will say, it doesn't relate necessarily to fine art, but it is Julie Ritchie's best practices, because there is so much just business class information in that course that I learned a lot while shooting it, which is not maybe a good thing to admit, but it's true. Everyone's got some education that you can learn from. I can learn from you, we can learn from her. It's just so true. So when and how did you come up with the name Rivenworks?
Right at the beginning, because I wanted a name, obviously, that represented what it was I was doing. So Riven is the sort of older English word for cut, broken. And then you add works onto anything and it makes it sound like you're out there, hammering, cutting, doing stuff. So I thought, well, that's good. That's a good impression. That's a good name. And it wasn't taken. And so there you go. Boom. There it is. But all the time, still, I get, is that Ribbon Works or River Works? So it's like, it's not the easiest name so I don't use it a lot, actually. It's just Kelley Knickerbocker, and she does mosaics and, whatever.
Well, yes, it's good that we have K2 makes out there. So it is different ways that people can find you. Yeah. But your website is rivenworks.com, correct?
Yeah, yes. But I'm also KelleyKnickerbocker.com. If you go there, I own that too.
You'll be segueing.
That is a business thing I learned from you. To have more than one. Grab all of your domains, so that anything can point to anything.
That's right. The domain king is right next to
we
you
learn.
over here.
We learn.
That's right.
Slowly, but we learn.
Yeah. So while you're learning, tell me what really keeps you inspired. I mean, 20 years now, the same commute. The studio is on their property here, much like it is at MAO and other places, artists. So what really keeps you inspired every day?
Exploration, curiosity, because I teach so that I can do whatever I want in the studio. And so my teaching practice sort of funds my studio practice. Art sells, obviously, the works sell, but I am just free to, when I'm in here, to explore and to figure out a new thing and to follow what my observation in doing the last thing has inspired me, right? Because inspiration, for me, I think inspiration is not something out there. It's all in here, and I generate it because I don't like idle time in my practice. I don't like to be stuck without a design or without an idea. I think that's infuriating to me, that wasted time. And so, but I find that if I start something, if I start doing anything, if I just pull out a new material and start cutting it with different tools and really analyzing it and looking at what does it look like, what's the back, what's the front, what's the inside, what's it doing, which segs right into our Power of One material, by the way. But when I do something like that, even if I'm in here, even over the last few days when I was cleaning up my crap hole of a studio, seriously, it looks gorgeous now. Take a look, because it's never gonna look this good again for probably the next 5 years. So, but even in doing that, in tidying up the studio and reorganizing a few things, really stopping to look, because it's observation. That's what keeps me inspired, is observation of what I'm doing, observation of what others are doing, how they're doing it, the world around me, abstract photography, abstract artists. I'm always looking, my feed and Instagram is all abstract artists. I'm actually very few mosaic artists, but mostly, painters, sculptors, I've got dancers, skateboarders, all kinds of different inspirations. So just that curiosity and observation and making note of what I'm seeing and what that makes me think of, or what that seems like, or what, so long answer to a short question.
No, they're all going to be short questions with long answers. That's the plan. But if you had to say something was intuitive in your practice, would you say that like a material will all of a sudden just speak to you and be something that you're like, okay, I got to go there? Because I know you are technical in part of your practice, but is there an intuitive part of it as well?
Absolutely. So the methodical part of it, I sort of feel that I'm both of those things, like both methodical and intuitive. So the methodical part, like I can be inspired by a material, but it's the methodical part, the testing, the trying it this way, that way, next to this other thing, cut this way instead of that way. So a lot of testing and a lot of experimenting is what opens up the intuitive. And I can be, I'll do all this methodical stuff, and I run a lot of mental scenarios about what it's going to look like, what the design's going to be like, blah, blah, blah. And then, so I'm being very methodical all the way up until I'm building the piece. And then is when the intuition kicks in, because once things start going into mortar, all bets are off. Mm-hmm. I can have planned all kinds of things, but once things start going into mortar and they tip, they nestle, they they lean, they change, right? So the setting, and once I see it and it's actually doing, that has to be the thing that's happening. And so quite often in the doing is when the intuition and the remembering of the tests I've done and whatever, and I have to trust that, and oh wow, I can push this up against that and create that space that I didn't even realize was going to happen. And so I got to go with that. I got to go explore that. I got to fill it. I got to I can do this thing. I can get off in this direction. So a lot of times that's where the intuition comes in, is in the setting itself, because so much is possible in the setting, as we will also discover in Power of One.
Well, and it's funny because your hands are going in all these different directions, and of course my brain as an artist is going ring, 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 ring.
Yeah.
But you have one of the most beautiful andamentos. And so everything that you're doing and it's going is still going to have these beautiful lines and speak this beautiful language.
Well, and even if it doesn't have lines, we'll look at a few pieces in here on the tour that don't have lines at all, but the thinking of andamento is underneath it all the time.
Right.
I'm always thinking about, because my work is a crossover between mosaic and assemblage, and I want that to be the case. So mosaic being the intentionally cut and intentionally placed with thought for the one before, the one after, and line work, that's the mosaic part. And the assemblage part is just the intuitive fitting, not necessarily in line work, but the intuitive fitting of objects, pieces together. And so without line work. And so the two of those together, I always want it to be that combination. And so that is, the thinking of andamento is always underneath the assemblage, because it's all about organization and the structure in which the materials work together. So it's that thinking. Initially in my earlier work, I was working without an understanding of andamento and not working in andamento, but just working in flow patterns, right? Like no line work, but just flow patterns. And that was intuitive and that was great. But it wasn't until I started studying andamento and really thinking about the principles of andamento and understanding them that I realized that instead of being constricting, that's actually freeing, because I can take that understanding of organization of materials and bring it into the parts of my work that are assemblage as well. And it makes them make more sense.
Yeah, and you really do, to me, make organized chaos look beautiful. And I don't know how else it is. It is just so beautiful when there's lines or when there's not lines. Your work really is that incredible.
Well, we have a big laugh about it, Annabella Wiwer and I, because she is so incredibly, beautifully precise. And when she was working here in my studio, she looked at the hammer and the Hardy setup I had for her, and I was so proud of it. And she's like, well, it's good because I'm not really needing to do super precise cutting. Oh my God, so funny.
Wow.
But I realized that she's absolutely right. She knows, right? She knows what a solid Hardy, and are you going to get the most precise cuts? Me, I do not know that. So I'm doing the best I know. But anyway, what's funny is that I realized it really got me thinking about precision cutting, and about, because we worked together for quite a while earlier this summer, and she's so precise and she's so on, which is, you see it in her work. It is so incredibly attuned, right? Like one piece to the next, and such precision, and it's beautiful. It's incredible. And I realized I am so not that, right? It got me thinking about how I cut and what I cut, and realizing that I don't want to be, all the time, I don't want to be as precise, because my nature is one of precision and rigidity. And so I fight that a lot in Mosaic. Mosaic for me is sort of a lifetime journey of embracing randomness and not, going with my absolute rigid, precise tendencies in cutting, in measuring, in placement, symmetry, all of that, right? I'm just like a total, I could be a prisoner to that. And so for me, it's almost like I have to push away. I'm so fond of the order, and I do want the order and organization, but I don't want the absolute precision. I want to embrace the unruly, the unsmooth, symmetrical pieces, and find the grace in that, and make that be the order and the organization, but not be so confined by precision, because I am so susceptible to that. Like I could go like totally that way, and I don't think that would be a good thing.
I was just gonna say, the day we see that work, we're all gonna, cry.
My earlier work was much more tight, and much more tight and precise. And somebody who was farther along than me, I asked her for a really frank critique of my style and my work, my progress. And she said, there's a point at which precision can become sterility, and it's almost too tight for its own good. And that was a huge aha moment for me. And I took that to heart, because I know that's my tendency. So the trying to loosen and still retain order and organization and harmony and relationship between every piece, but not get trapped in that. So I'm always a little bit pushing away the idea of precision, although I should probably learn how to cut really precisely, so at least I can know how to do it.
You can know how and then not to.
So Annabella and I are working on that. She's working on that with me, and I'm working with her on trying to use bigger tesserae and have a little bit more shimmy and looseness in her. And it's been great to be really close friends with Erin Pankratz, because she is so beautifully loose and from my perspective, wild with her tesserae and her colors and her, so I've got these lovely friends on both sides of the, continuum, and so I'm somewhere in the middle, doing what I do and feeling so grateful for both of those influences and those ways of being, because they're so necessary, and there's the whole continuum is necessary and lovely. So
it is, and having known both of them too, I see how it's like this just beautiful line of the Erin, to you, to Annabella, but it's all wonderful to see. We were even in Loreto, Mexico earlier this year, and saw one of your pieces hanging in another artist's studios,
Oh, yeah.
and I was like, that's a Kelley piece. So there is this sense of style, whatever it is that is your dance and how you are working, your pieces and making them. There is definitely the Kelley stamp, and I just love
that's
it.
a beautiful thing about Andamento, is that there's like X number of rules, right? There are rules, guidelines, whatever you want to call them, conventions. But then every artist, as Annabella describes it, it's a language, and we all speak it a little differently. We all phrase differently. We pronounce different words differently.
Some of us have a vocabulary like no other.
Some of us fumble over words, plenty of that. But, we do each have a different voice and a slightly different way that we speak that language. And it just, it occurs naturally, because the way we cut, the way we set, there are things about that are inescapably us.
Yeah.
So the more you do it, the more you build a body of work, the more that comes forward. And so because I've been doing this full time for, all these years, It's just a matter of repetition, and I kind of find ways that I cut that I like. I tend to use longer, skinnier tesserae. That tends to be one of my signatures, is a skinny tessera. I love those because it allows for so much undulation and movement in the piece. So yeah, so it just occurs. So like when students say to me, how will I develop my original voice?
Could you even ask the questions now? This is perfect.
So what I was gonna say was,
I got this. Jerry, Kelley, I'm out.
No, so students will ask me that. Well, how do I develop my own style? And the only answer to that is to just work, because it's going to come through in your cutting, in your setting. You're going to develop things that you love to do, so you do them again. You do another iteration of it, but it's how you do it. So I look at it like everything's already been done, but it's how we combine what we learn from different people. So when you take different courses and you're learning different styles and different approaches, it's kind of like everybody's got their own chili recipe or their own whatever recipe, but everybody tweaks it, right? And puts in that funky ingredient or cooks it longer or shorter or on cycles so that it's, wow, that's fluffier than wow. Or that's like really, it has a really strong vanilla flavor or whatever. Everybody's got their own recipe for whatever it is. And so in our case, it's mosaic making. Each of us is the recipe, of the ingredients of our experience, our education, our likes, all of that stuff comes together to make an original, that combination is unique to each of us. So,
well, and what could be interesting is this course that we are about to launch tomorrow, that it's you teaching all these different ways to use these different materials. And what if someone like all of a sudden starts working with one of them and they're like, oh, and have that aha moment, and it's their own iteration of those materials in their way, but you were just kind of, the spark that lit it with what you're educating them with.
Yeah, and that's the hope for any instructor, is not that students end up, going out and doing Kelley Knickerbocker, or whoever, Rachel Davies or Rachel Sager, or, that's not the end goal. That's, it's you observing and continuing to iterate and continuing to invent past what we do. And, I had somebody tell me earlier in my teaching career, they were telling me, they were asking me, well, aren't you a little worried that, your work will be your style will be diffused or diluted by your students doing your style? And I'm thinking, when that happens, I'll let you know. But it hasn't happened, because students go away and they fold in whatever I taught them, whatever technique or whatever, they go and fold that in with their love of X, Y, Z and their favorite material and their whatever, and it becomes theirs. And that's the idea. It becomes theirs. The techniques, they just go and go and go, and they get folded in like an ingredient into your recipe of how you do it. And also, I think the other key is to continue to evolve, because the other reason why I was kind of like, I don't know how to answer that question, is because my thinking is that an artistic practice always evolves. It continues to evolve. It doesn't ever stay, because you're curious, you're looking, you're experimenting, you're trying new things. And so it's always evolving. So you're going to evolve past whatever that thing was, that people were, really into in a moment. You're going to evolve past. You're going to keep doing, keep moving forward. So, that's the richness of an art practice.
Well, and nothing makes us happier than we do see, either at Foundations and Fundamentals or in the comment sections of the MAO courses, is when someone has taken one of our instructors' courses and we're like, oh my God, look at the spin that this person just put on. Then I'm like, job done. I am so happy that I brought in this instructor and this student watched it and now they're making this. And it's just, that's what's so gratifying to Jerry.
I saw that happen recently with, just the one that comes to mind is my Shard Logic class with MAO. Mm-hmm. And Deb Simons took that class. And then she came and studied with me again and to do something else, but she did something in the Shard Logic, and I watched it happen on the table, and I'm just like, holy crawdads, woman, this is amazing. I never would have, oh my God, it's her style, right? It's her style, her materials doing this, sort of prompted idea, but under her hands, it's like, it's completely different. It's completely amazing, right? And that's the idea. That's why too, though, you got to think about when you do a piece in a course, that should never be a piece that gets shown in an exhibition, because you're trying it on, and you're trying to figure out if you can fold it in, or if it's gonna go with you in your way. So it takes a while to build a technique into your style, right? To have it become you. It'll happen, as you keep doing it. But it does take a minute, right? For it not to look, sort of derivative of the instructor. So just keep on, and it'll just, it'll happen. It'll become yours. And then, show it. Get out there
and there's been a couple others, and it's exactly that. We want
it's
you
really
to
exciting.
We want you to make what the instructor is teaching, and we want you to make it with them, hopefully. But then that is the piece that is your sample, and that is the one you're going to look at and go, how can I do this differently? And one artist had a line of Shard Logic falling off of the substrate.
That was so cool.
I was like, wow,
so cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that as long as the instructor is going to share the knowledge, it is up to the students to learn it and make something with it, and then run with it.
Keep running.
Run until you run off the deep end, and we can see what you do.
Yeah.
So, okay, to circle back a little bit, because we've talked so much about your practice.
Yep.
What is a day in the life for Kelley Knickerbocker? Does she like coffee? Is she a coffee in the morning girl? I don't know, really.
Yes, definitely. At least twice in the morning. Yes. Usually wake up. I'm the early waker upper, so I'll make coffee and bring coffee back to bed for me and my husband, and we talk about the day and sort of who's doing what and what's happening. And as you may know, Mark's parents live in our home as well. They're part of our household, and Dad has Alzheimer's. So that's part of our day. That's part of our daily checking in and, seeing what they need and working around, some of those things. So I'll get up and check in with mom. Mark and I usually walk to coffee after we've had morning coffee. Sounds pretty decadent, but actually it happens pretty quickly. Happens pretty quickly because there's lots of coffee around here, so we don't have to walk far.
No, you don't, and it's delicious.
And so then I usually get into, I'd like to switch this and maybe do more Mosaic in the morning and admin in the afternoon, but often I'll just start right in, because when I woke up, I'm usually on my phone doing some sort of publicity thing or answering correspondence or whatever. So I'll dive into my administrative stuff, and then usually in the afternoons I'll get out here and work on whatever it is I'm working on at the moment for at least several hours, and then things in the afternoon have to be done just around the house and all of that, and planning things. And so often in the evening what I'm doing is looking out at my calendar and seeing if there's any things I need to proactively get on. But, as so many of you know, being your own, your single shingle, as my engineer husband calls it, being a single shingle, single business owner, you have to do everything, right?
Yes, you do.
You're doing the accounting, the publicity, the time management, the negotiating with clients, you're doing all the things. And so I easily spend 50% of my time doing the business side of that stuff. And then, somewhere finding a social life in there somewhere, being with people and, sort of stepping outside the art, producing life a little bit. And, but it really is, it's always underneath. I'm always thinking about it. I'm always thinking, about what I have to do and all that. That's the other thing about being your own, single shingle, is that there aren't really any days off.
That's right.
For me, there's really no day that doesn't have some kind of work thing in there. And I usually try to plan. I'm always planning the next teaching trips. I don't do as many longer trips or far away trips because of the parents being here, but I'm always like planning my next one. That's I just came back from teaching at the Sitka Center for Art and Ecology down on the Oregon coast, which was absolutely lovely. I will absolutely be doing that again next year. So if you're in the Pacific Northwest area and are familiar or not with Sitka, look them up, because it's an absolutely beautiful place to learn and to be while you're learning. It's worth knowing about, so definitely check that out.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, so that's kind of how it goes. Like all kinds of things back and forth. Lots of interruptions.
And is there anything that you like love more or hate more about the business? Because you do, like you said, all of it. And if you could hire an assistant, what would the assistant do?
Like everything but the doing of the mosaics. If I could just do mosaic all the time, that's what I'd be doing.
Right.
But actually, Todd and I, my studio mate, have talked about having an intern in, to do things like prep substrates and, that sort of thing, even process materials, right? Once we know, what different things we want with some different materials, because that stuff takes time, that stuff takes time. That's not the doing. So it can't really farm out some of the other stuff, the responding and the negotiating and interacting with hosts and all of that. But that's probably what I would farm out. I would also farm out probably the accounting and the invoicing. Not a numbers gal. So not a numbers gal. So
no, it hurts our heads. We know.
Yeah.
So where it kind of segues into my next question: if you were to get, this assistant or intern, where do you see mosaic art in the next 5 to 10 years? If you were like to educate this person, that's become the big question, and I think the larger mosaic community is the sharing of information to a younger generation, and that more and more people are going to need to learn it so we don't lose it. And how do you see us, them, life in 5 to 10 years? I mean, in 10 years, you're going to be a certain age. I don't care what it is. I'm not going to say it, but it's just more about you still be standing here because you love it. You'll still be standing here in 20 years because you love
I'll
it.
probably be doing it until I'm dead.
Yeah. It's probably going to be right here.
Yeah, this is where you'll find me. Yes.
I'm just saying.
With my boots on.
Exactly. The cutest boots. The girls got boots. But it's more about, I think it's just a conversation that we're all starting to have about the longevity and where is this art going for a younger generation.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting question because there's so many variables in there, like what do you mean by mosaic? What do you mean by, like, where will it be? Like, I mean, there'll always be people doing it because there will always be people breaking stuff up and putting stuff together. Especially with all of you lovely people who are doing community mosaics, and introducing the larger community of all ages, the Jen Coons and the
Kathleen Crocetti,
Catherine England, all of you all who are doing these amazing community artworks, Barb DeBala, I mean, all of you. So I don't think it's gonna die. I mean, people are doing residencies, like Mark Brody has done, for years, has done residencies in schools, so I don't see that mosaic in the dictionary definition, is gonna die, because it's so accessible, it's so easy to do. And then I think too, like, are we talking about, America or, the United States, or are we talking about worldwide? Because the rest of the world has more of a tradition of this than we do. So people are still, can be journeymen and, full on, Spilimbergo is still churning them out, Everybody's, Coco Mosaico is bringing this to the world, and people are going over there on a regular basis. So I don't think it's in any danger of dying. I think the question is there going to be developed and enough of an understanding of it? Like, are we doing enough educating in a larger sense, to curators and, people who are sort of deciding what gets seen and all of that? Do they understand what mosaic is, and what, will there be a track for it, that becomes a more of a I'm speaking in terms of the U.S., you know, and the North America, sort of the English-speaking world. Um, will there be, you know, like I think
fine
that,
art box.
well,
to
I
check
think
in
of
a
the
way.
word track, not just fine art, but just an acceptance of this as one of the things that we do. You know, like I remember teaching at Penland School of Crafts, and there were several tracks that they have, you know, studios and, you know, people who teach and all of that, and they are really focused on these tracks like ceramics and metalworking, both jewelry and forging, you know, blacksmithing, that kind of thing. And glass, you know, glass work, blown glass, hot glass has become one of those now, where it wasn't always. So I kind of see some parallels of Mosaic with the glass movement. That was formerly just functional, decorative, you know, craft, and now it has made its way by enough people doing it in a, you know, in a really dedicated way that involves the principles of art and design and blah blah blah, all of that. And it has become one of those, you know, those tracks that we understand that you can work your way through into a practice, into a career as that. So, you know, it'd be great if Mosaic could find that footing as well. So of course we'll always be educators, right? Any of us, that when we are dealing with anyone in the art world, I say that with a capital A or even with a small a, art, that we are, you know, helping people to understand what Mosaic is, and not in a an irritated way that, what do you mean you don't take Mosaic in this show? You know, let me tell you, it's a, you know, but no, like, hey, let's just talk about this. And I totally get that that's your thing, but hey, let's talk about actually what Mosaic is, and let me show you a little bit. And, you know, I get that, you know, I'm not going to get into the show or whatever, but, you know, let me introduce you to, you know, in a good way, right, to what it's possible for Mosaic to be. Because I think a lot of people in the U.S. still have that, in North America in general, still have that thinking that Mosaic is just this or just that, or it's not really art or whatever. So I think it's kind of incumbent on all of us to be doing that sort of joyful educating, wherever we are, to whoever we, you know, come in contact with. I probably won't start teaching students, I mean small people, anytime soon. But I'm always excited when the age range varies in a course, in a workshop. You know, that's awesome, because you do think about the fact that, new people who are going to get hooked on this and be spreading the gospel.
Well, and it's interesting because we recently have started an ad campaign, and we were talking about our demographic, and I'm like 25, I want 25, and then we found out that was a good number for Mosaic.
Nice.
So so we're realizing that there are more younger people looking for it, and
excellent.
You know, you only can hope their path goes in just exploring and continuing and doing it. But yes, that's sort of, you answered the question in that I really want to know from other people where this continued passion is going to come from, because one day the boots will be straight up over here.
That's right. Nobody lives forever. That's
Nobody,
true.
but we're doing a good time. Yeah. We're having a good time doing it right now. That's what's important. And on that note, I don't even know if you want to answer this question, but what do you love about teaching live, and what do you love about teaching online? Because you love everything. Well, in this world.
Yeah, it's true.
So not one is better than the other, but you maybe have something more of this one or less of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just thought it was
so teaching online is a really great. It is really fun. I actually enjoy it quite a bit,
because we have fun, you and I.
that too. But you can see that I'm having fun as I'm doing it. Genuinely having a blast as I'm doing it. But so one of the things I love about teaching online is that it allows me to just talk through the process, which is really fun, to build and talk about it as I'm building it, and just sort of walk through the whys and the order of things the way I do them. That is just, I just find that to be a blast. I just find that to be really fun. But the fun part of live teaching is that the students talk back. And it's actually a conversation. And there's actually every course I teach ever live, there's always somebody who asks a question that just like, sets me on my ear. You know, it's just like, oh gosh, like that is such a good question. I don't know. Or yeah, let's find out. Let's do it that way and see. Right? So there's this interaction and this also shared in real time, this shared love of what we're doing. And that is a blast to have people just joying all over, you know, what they're doing. I'm struggling too, but having those moments and just having the permission, the time and the space and just the dedication of this whole thing to them, of just enjoying what they're doing and just, you know, and sharing that with the class, it's a joyful thing. And it also keeps me, like mosaic making for me is generally a solitary thing here in the studio. And so, so teaching and, you know, having a room full of people who are all excited about it and having fun, you know, some really good things get said and talked about and re-said and, you know, getting their take on how this works for you, and everything gets folded in then, both on their end, on my end, it gets folded into how they learn and what they know. And for me, it's how they hear and how whether the way that we're doing it works for them, and all the different ways that people learn, you know, orally, visually, kinetically. There's so many ways that students learn, and so from a psychological standpoint, that's a very challenging and wonderfully so. I find that very invigorating, and trying to meet those different ways of learning is a really fun challenge for me. So there's a lot to love about both, really.
And I'm going to ask you all to put in the chat, if you know Kelley real well, what's the one thing that's different between her online courses and in live person? Oh, come on. You don't know the answer. She got it.
I know.
Let's see who says it first in the chat. And in the meantime, I think Margot Fallon's got it right away. What are some of the mosaic artists that inspire you?
Kate Jessup comes to mind, right off the top of my head. You know, different ones for different reasons. Kate is like, her thinking process is just the thinking process and the execution, how she approaches materials and how she approaches design. I don't even understand what she's saying half the time, but I just want to hear her talk about it. I just want to hear her talk about it and look at her work. That's it. Whatever. Annabella for the rigor that she brings to her practice and talking about it, the deep conversations that we've had about it, and just looking at her work and the way she executes, huge. Erin, because so much difference and change in the way Erin works, how her practice evolves. I'm a big fan of what's her name? I don't remember her name, but her Instagram is Studio Modi. She's in St. Petersburg, Russia. My gosh, her use of materials just frickin' slays me. So that's one that I keep an eye on a lot. And I know there's, you know, it's just like, do you remember when there were video stores and you had in your mind, in your living room, you had a whole list of things in your head that you're, oh, okay, I want to rent this, and this. And you walk into the video store and your mind's totally blank. That's what's happening to me right now.
Well, we can add it to the comment section later if you want to list them all. But.
Yeah. I mean, I have a list somewhere. I used to have it on the door. Because Todd and I talk about that occasionally, my studio mate, we talk about that. There was blank.
That's okay. Well, so every mosaic artist uses materials, right?
Yes.
You use many different kinds of materials.
Yeah.
So leading into what we will be talking about next, which is the power of one, your next course, and then we will do a tour of the studio as we're wrapping this up. But share with us how you see materials as something more than the way they present themselves.
Yeah.
Like, I know you see the glass blob, it'll never be put down as a glass blob.
Yeah. Especially materials that are machined, that are produced by a machine, not handmade, because they tend to be relentlessly what they are. And so in themselves, they don't offer a lot of originality or character. Even if they're quite beautiful. Like I put stained glass in that category because it is so relentlessly what it is. There's not a lot of variance in thickness. You know, because it's so thin, there are limited ways that it can be used. And yet, if you've ever looked at the edge of a piece of stained glass that has a lot of swirled values of color in it, it is astonishing. I mean, that's why at the beginning of my practice, it was a lot of stained glass and it was a lot of using it up on its edge, because there's so much activity in that edge. If there's a lot of activity in the glass, there's a lot of activity in the edge, and that's an unexpected aspect of that glass. So using it that way is unexpected, unusual, interesting. So finding out the ways to do that. But yeah, so materials as they are, often, especially if they're like crockery, shells, things that have a previous function, right? So there's machine stuff and stuff that has a previous function. It's hard to separate the previous function from when you use it in a mosaic work. So I had a really good, hard at the moment, but good ultimately experience at the Chicago Mosaic School. I was taking a course there with Verdiano Marzi, and I started with a shell. That was a cross section of a shell, but it was clearly the cross section of a shell. And I just thought the shapes of it in it were so gorgeous. I wanted to start with it as my focal thing. So I built my thing, blah, 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 did my thing. And at the end, when we did the critique, had a couple of other eye-opening moments in the critique too. But this particular one, I think it was Karen and me that said, "Why did you choose a shell?" And I said, "Because of the shapes, like all those cool shapes in there, you know." And she says, "But why did you use a shell?" You know, and I couldn't understand what she meant. And so she like asked me a couple different ways, and I was confused, and it was a tough moment, right? It was a hard moment, but then it dawned on me, and she clarified that we have associations with shells. We know what they are. We know where they're from, and so it's very difficult to make that purely abstract and leave out all the connotations and the associations that we have with different objects. And so if you're going to choose something that is a defined shape, there should be a reason. You know, it's like, duh. It was a wonderful light bulb, you know, understanding for me, who does not have an art education. If you have an art education, you probably already know this. But it was a wonderful learning moment for me. And I've never forgotten it. And I see work differently after that moment, because it's absolutely true. So if I'm going to use a cup or a mug or a bowl or whatever, I don't want to necessarily hearken back to its, you know, oh, that's a cup. What does that have to do with what this mosaic is saying, right? Usually nothing when it comes to, you know, my work. If it doesn't have anything to do with that, then I need to reduce it down to its elements. And for me, that is its most basic abstract elements, what it is. And that is the most delightful part to me of processing a material for mosaic, because it becomes reduced down to the absolutes of what it is. Its color, its texture, its form, and its, you know, if it's crockery, its clay body, its glaze, all of those things, and figuring out how to make it new again, how to make it not associated as a mug or a bowl or whatever, but have it simply be an abstract material. Just let go of all the previous function, and yet take advantage of all of the things that exist in that material because of its previous function, like curvature, particular curvatures, certain lumps and smoothnesses and roughnesses and protrusions that are because it was this other thing. And so take advantage of all of those, but, not have it be like the mind go to that thing. I was doing a section in a mosaic gosh, I don't think my sister-in-law knows anything about, this live thing. So hopefully she's not listening to this, but, I was doing this coral section of an abstract work years and years ago. And I was using all these different shapes of coral, and, I put 2 pieces of coral together in this thing, and I was doing work in progress photos like I do on Facebook, and I did that day's posting, and she messaged me that evening and said, "Oh, I love those 2 pieces you put together. They remind me of, an adult and a child in the protective relationship and blah, 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 blah." And as she's talking, I'm reaching for my chisel. I'm like reaching for my chisel. I'm gonna wham that baby out of there, because that's all she could see. That's all that the piece became about. That, and I thought, if you're seeing that, then probably other people are making that association, and that's got to come out of there, because that's not what the piece is about. And so if it's that strong of an if it evokes that strongly that idea, then it needs to go. So chiseled it out and explained it to her. I thanked her, beautiful perception and lovely, and she's not wrong, but that's not what the piece was about. So I had to take it out, because that, so thinking about that, like what associations does the material have already, and can I use it in such a way that it either capitalizes on those associations or leaves them behind altogether and is deconstructed enough that it simply becomes another usable material that has unique physical properties, in service of a different idea.
And I'm not laughing at you, I'm just laughing
Sure
at
you
the
are.
amount of time that Kelley has come into our kitchen and looked at a little bowl and says, "Tell me when
my
you're ready to let
God.
go of this bowl." So if any of you ever have Kelley in your kitchen, do inventory before she arrives.
Pat me down on the way out, because
That's all I'm going to say on that note, is
Yeah.
nothing is safe, and
So
glue it down.
I recently took a trip to BC, and I visited a friend in Nanaimo, and I had dinner at her house. She had this gorgeous gray, white mottled dishware. And I'm like, I'm ready to shove it down my shirt, down my pants, whatever, to walk out with it. And she's like, "Oh my God, stop talking about the dishes." She'll take you where I got them. So she took me to wherever it is in Canada that's the equivalent of, I don't know, Target or whatever. And here's this whole set of this stuff. And I'm like, "Give me that, put it in a box, every one of everything," because that's coming home with me. But it's like, she's like, "Thank goodness now I can, mine is safe."
Yeah, right, barely. But yes, because you gave her the supplier, because it's a little bit of a drug. No, never mind. But on that note, I think now is a good time to do a little studio tour of all of the materials. So give us a moment as we get Jerry behind the camera, and then Kelley will sort of follow with him to point and show you some of her storage. I know people are asking about the pieces behind us right now, and I know we are going to answer questions as soon as we sit back down, and then we have a really special gift for you. So hang on one second as Jerry grabs the camera and I sort of
and
slip
gifts.
out of the
We're
way.
just no end of generous. Okay, so I have to show you this piece up on the wall, the black and white that you're looking at. That is like the first one material mosaic that I ever made. That's paper towels. So that was just a deep exploration of this one material and how it can be a tessera and how it can interact with mortar. And I was using the mortar to color it and to solidify it and all kinds of things. So it was a great exploration of just one material. So I think you're seeing probably the also the drawers and the all the materials that are in the drawers. And this is my favorite section because it is the achromatic section. It's all no color really. That's my favorite. And then above that is there's some recent works with my drawing. These are also the zigzaggy one and the one that has the cross members and the flag here. These are all one material works. There is only one material in these works. There's just stuff that I've done to that material. It's crockery. And there's just this one too, the white one. It's all one material. So it's just crockery that I have brutalized into doing what I want it to, but it's all one type of crockery, one color, one type. And yeah, the storage drawers will give you the information on what those are. I have to be able to see material in order to know that I have it and to like quickly find my inspiration. So that's why the transparent storage. And I also have a rule of thumb that if I can get a material relatively quickly, locally, I don't stock it in my studio because I don't have a lot of room here. So I just do small amounts of really cool stuff. And sometimes I have a little bit more of it elsewhere, but I just have a note of where I got it and I can get more of it. So we have our mortar station over here. We also have some works. I'll go back just a sec to these works over here by other people that inspire me. Marion Shapiro and Luca Barberini above her. So yeah, we've got our little mortar station over here where we can chisel the mortar off our tools when we don't clean them properly. Anybody who knows me knows that's exactly how I work. I walk away from the project when I'm done, clean my tools later. This corner over here, this is my studio mates area. Todd, who's a fantastic mosaic artist in his own right. We've been studio mates for about 10 years, and he is an amazing person, a dear friend. I love him to death. And so he's got this whole section over here. And I initially thought that having a studio mate would be problematic because I thought, oh my gosh, now I'm going to be observed. Like, this is a person who's going to see all of my corner cutting and my mistaking and whatever. So the first couple of years were a little awkward for both of us figuring all that out. But now it's hard for me to imagine not having a studio mate to spin ideas with and to critique and to undo things and talk through things and get a second look at something. So just love that. I wouldn't trade it. Wouldn't trade it for the world. And of course he has this beautiful small tea collection, all color coordinated and arranged. And we've got our open storage for stone. I was going to make a comment. I've been telling Tami, we have a coffee maker over here. Like, it's for show because we haven't made coffee in here for like, I don't know, 5 years. And so dusting it this morning before y'all came in, it's like it's only a matter of time till this disappears and we have more material here. That we've lost our refrigerator, our microwave, all of it has been replaced by materials and stuff. So that's only a matter of time.
How about the CD player?
The CD, I was listening to a CD this afternoon. There is something about listening to a CD start to finish, you know? Ben Harper, we were having a moment today. That blues album, oh man, Doors Open, yeah, it was awesome. So anyway, we have our little homemade Hardy stands here that have the hammer holders just in a bucket, 8 by 8 or whatever it is with cement, yeah. And isn't that fabulous? My husband, bless his heart, built those for us. And just more storage down the wall. You might have noticed that the storage over here is rather colorful. I don't spend a lot of time in that section. So, you know, this stuff over here that's neutral, and this other stuff, this other underneath all the artwork over here is a lot of neutrals, a lot of natural stuff. I spend a lot of time there. And more work by other people you will recognize. The coconuts are by Michael Kruzich, as is the emoji, which I adore. Julie Sperling is right next to him with the stonework, and then Luca Barberini again. And yeah, so I like to have those in my space, inspiring me. I do have to give a shout about this easel. I'll tell you about both my easels. Just found this one recently on Etsy. I gotta clue you guys into this dude. This was about $400, best $400 I ever spent. This easel, oh, look at this. You can't see it. Look at that. Oh, wow. When I saw that, I thought I was gonna, died and gone to heaven. So it does spin, and it's very solid. And I'll give you the information about where this guy is on Etsy because he makes them. This is a guy down in California, and he makes them in his little carpenter shop, and he's been doing it for about 6 years, and they're fantastic, sturdy, tough, and they're portable. They're the handle, you can fold them down. They're portable. They come with a bag to carry it in. It's fantastic. He's really got it down. So there's a couple of like, there's an unfinished work. There's most of this stuff is finished, but that's an unfinished one that I'm waiting for my brain to tell me how the top is going to be finished. Sometimes that takes a while. Some older works in this corner. And then my big easel, I love that. I can do really big stuff on that one. Super sturdy, bends, 6 ways to Sunday. That's made by a guy who teaches at the Savannah Institute of something arty business. So he makes these out of these beautiful woods in his studio, and they're like stupid expensive, but they're also super sturdy, and they can hold up to the weight of the size, the stuff that we do that's big and heavy. And they're adjustable up, down, near, far. And when I'm working on the top of the piece, I just put the whole easel down on the floor and work at the top of the piece. So it serves me in a couple of ways, and that's current work. It's happening on the easels right now. There's always another palette of materials that's getting considered and sort of percolating in the back of what's getting worked on in the front. So I'm just throwing materials together and seeing if there's anything that needs to be added to that palette. If we go up, I guess you can see the doors. Let me just step out of the way. You can see the doors. That's some of my earlier work, and it's also a course that I teach on MAO. The glass on mirror course is basically this technique of attaching mosaic to either a mirror or a glass surface. So that textured clear glass. And I have up here, I want to point out the Gila Rayberg. We did a trade, and these beautiful, I call them the watchers, in my studio right above the door, keeping an eye on me. I love having her right in my studio along with me. I adore her. So that's the studio, and we're going to come down, and on this work table, I've got the class example, the piece that kind of started my thinking about the course of the Power of One, because this is all one material. It's just these wee penny rounds. These are the 1-inch version, I think, of the penny rounds, and they're just cut in different ways, and using the back and the front, and then cutting them in different ways to make them look like many different materials. And also, you note the use of the mortar and the mortar colors that sort of sneakily serve as a second material because it has such a strong color read. So we talk about that in the course, about using mortar to work to accentuate different aspects of one material. This is a little exercise in one material, and it's just a very simple tumbled glass tile, and then starting to work with, it's the shard logic concept of just starting to add variation and disturbance until by the time you get down to the bottom, it looks very different. So there's many ways this material can read. It can be very staid and very flat and very calm. And yet when you expose its shiny interior and you disrupt its surface and you tip it, then you get all this movement and all this change. And that's quite an interesting, that would be a lovely section of mosaic just in and of itself in one material. So much can be done. When I wanted to show this about the course, because we talk about this in the course, how you can find a thing. In this case, it's a plate, which was a Christmas plate from a store, and it was on sale after Christmas was over, and Tami and I were actually walking through that store, and I'm like, oh my god, I gotta get one of those. They gotta get really cheap, and then I'm gonna get a couple of them for this concept, right? Because this is the plate, and you can see that it's like birch trees and other trees in the wintry sky. It's all white, but there's a lot of value change. There's dark, and there's medium, and there's the really light. And if you break that down into those values, you see that there's some that are mostly dark, mostly medium, with a little bit of dark or light, and then high contrast ones, dark and light, and then pale, mostly, if not all, light. And so now to recombine these in an abstract mosaic, which will be the next step, there's no indication at all. This is not a snowy tree scene. It's just going to be an abstract mosaic using those values. So we talk about that in the course, about finding materials that you can reduce. And we talked about this a little bit just a minute ago about, oh, it's a plate or it's a mug or whatever, but it can be reduced to just its properties. So I loved that it was so sepia and kind of old looking, and it had those clear values, and also that the pale white has sort of a sheen to it. It's almost iridescent or silvery in its white. So I can't wait to make something out of this, and maybe I'll circle back and have Tami post a photo on when I get it done, so you can sort of see the full circle of this all getting done. So that's mainly that's the studio. Down underneath the tables we have, sort of labeled storage of the larger materials or the things that we have more of that we just have a little bit on the wall in the small drawers. So we try to keep it really well organized and labeled. And of course all of our wet pigments and dry pigments and all of that stuff down at the end under the mortar, because don't want to spend a lot of time hunting. Want to be able to find things pretty quickly and get moving, get back into the making of the mosaics. So we try to keep it pretty well organized, and because it's small, and so we need to, I don't want to be tripping over stuff. So there you go. There's your tour.
Thank you so much, Kelley, for that tour.
You are
And
welcome.
Before our hour is completely finished, we would love to answer some of your questions.
Ooh, go to it.
And it looks like we can kind of see them right here in the chat, but Jerry can also send them over to me. There was one that came up a minute ago. Do you see that one, Jerry? I can't see it in the chat anymore. But someone said your studio looks enormous.
No, it is, I want to say it's like, it's slightly smaller than 10 by 20.
Do you wear a mask 10 by 20? It's a beautifully
But it's tall.
curated
It's
studio
tall.
and lots of natural light.
Yeah, it's tall and lots of natural light. So it used to be the garage, and we jacked it up and put a cement floor down and then raised it up 7 feet. So, oh yeah, I didn't show you the loft
Storage,
up there. That's for, storage. But yeah, it's less than 10 by 20, and we have work tables all around the, interior. So there's like, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet to walk back and forth in. And when there's two of us in here trying to get to the garbage can or the mortar or the, that material over there, it can get a little bit twistery.
Yeah, but you guys do a great job, and you've been in here for years producing incredible
I
work.
just shove him out of the way. Yeah, we're at that stage.
Todd, if you're listening, we love you.
Love you.
Love you. Hey, so people are starting to ask a couple questions, and one of them is, do you wear a mask or any kind of protection when you are working?
Depends on what I'm doing. Normally, I'm mixing up mortar in such small quantities that I don't. And I also have, I usually have the window at one end and the door at the other end open, plus the fan is going, and I have an exhaust fan out the top. So generally I don't. The times when I do are when I am working with something really stinky. I mean, I have a respirator in here that I'll put on when I'm working with something that's really toxic smelling, even though I have this I have really good cross ventilation.
And
But-
masks are always good when you're mixing mortar and the tints and all of that. That's just kind of
The tints are super,
no-brainer.
super fine, right?
And
so they get in the air.
Yes, very easily.
And that's not great.
Yes.
So
Someone else is asking, what is the surface on your work tables? Plastic, Formica? Formica. There you go. Easily to wipe off.
Yep.
And keep clean. And
Yep.
she's had these for years again, like we were here 10 years ago, and it's the same one.
Yep.
Someone's asking, is Weddy board your go-to substrate?
Yeah, like right now, yeah. And often it's the what I call weedy wafers, the 1/8 inch thick. So super thin and really, especially for small pieces, it's great. The bigger I get, the thicker the weedy gets.
Yeah, that's
you know, for
important.
rigidity.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty much it is.
So someone's asking, do you have a favorite tool for cutting your found plates? I love some pottery pieces, or I have some pottery pieces and that are amazing, but the thickness and Hammer and Hardy ruin it, and they're thick. Would Hammer and Hardy ruin it?
I don't tend to use Hammer and Hardy for crockery, no. Often I'll use one of those nippers that are for tile cutting.
Compound nippers or side biters?
Side biters is what I want to say, to start the initial cut, because they're so tough. They're not really for fine tune cutting. That's my Montolet nippers always for crockery. But those side biters will get that first cut through the really thick thing. So through large pieces of thick things, the side biters are great for that cut. And then I'll usually from there, as the pieces get smaller, I might fine tune them on the Hammer and Hardy or with my Montolet nippers.
But yeah, it's good to experiment with any of those things.
Yeah.
Take whatever tools you have,
Yeah.
and start out and see what works best, which is pretty much how you figured it out, right?
Yep.
Yeah, just
how I got my Popeye arms. And, I can nip anything now. With that, more than I probably should. When I say to other people, "Hey, yeah, just nip this," and they're like, "Ah!" I realize that I should be more careful in telling you what you should do. Grab all the tools that are compound and super hefty for thick things, because protect your hands and your body.
Someone's asking about how you prevent the white effluence, I'm saying the word wrong. Efflorescence, thank you, from coming up in your black mortar.
I use admix, I don't use water.
Bingo!
That's it right there.
That was
You'll never have efflorescence again.
That was your freebie for the day.
That is a great reason to be using admix, because you'll never have that problem, because it's all in the water.
Grout too.
It's issues in the water.
If you are a grouter and you're making maybe a table outside, whatever, Admix, it will always be your friend. And Kelley only uses Admix, so in any of her courses, with her mortar only, because Kelley doesn't grout, you will learn that, and you will practice it, and you'll all of a sudden realize that 2 gallons is going to take you, a long way.
Yeah, and it has, the Admix has other properties as well. It makes your mortar more flexible, makes it stickier so that it grips better, like shinier things, it'll grip them better. So it has a lot of great properties to it, but that's a big one, because the efflorescence is usually about water.
And we'll give you the extra freebie that goes with it. If you're using Mapei as your mortar, you will use the Mapei Admix. If you're using Laticrete, you'll use the Laticrete. The next question, Martha Burke, one of my favorites. Do you recommend an artist residency, or can you recommend?
Yes.
Say it already.
Yes, I do.
You're waffling.
You're killing us.
I know. I'm so back and forth on this. I'm on the fence. No, I do, and for different reasons. Okay, so some residencies you go because you want to be drenched in that place. You want it to influence your work, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful reason to go and do. Some residencies you go because of who else is there. Like I got asked to do the Ireland, the Olive Stack Gallery residency for the second time. The first time it was about the place and about the materials of the place. And that's what drew me there the first time. And it was wonderful and amazing. And it was absolutely that. The second time, it was also to be there with Scott Fitzwater, which was a hoot. But the second time, the reason I went was to have a month to work with Annabella Wooer. That was the big draw, because I learned so much in that month about practice, about andamento, about thought process, all of that. So that was really important to me. There are some residencies also where you have, they're the type of residency where there will be other artists on the grounds, in other fields, other disciplines, whatever. Those are amazing because they offer opportunities for collaboration, just eye-opening inspiration, conversation. about another process or whatever. And then sometimes it's just because you get however long you get of just uninterrupted time to work, to do nothing but work, sleep, eat, exercise, and work. To really, if you want to start a body of work, if you want to develop out a process on each of these residencies I'm mentioning, I definitely had something in mind when I went. I thought, okay, I'm with Annabella. I want to work small and fine, and I'm going to learn some things about that from her. And I did, and I made 8 little pieces. Just took my time and made 8 mosaics that were small and fine. And so having that time to develop out an idea, or just to, the time before it was all about, okay, I want to practice with the materials of the place and epoxy sculpt and, and surface treatments. That's what I want to focus on while I'm here, and have a month to do that. So the idea of having unfettered time to just focus and do that, like no dogs to walk, nobody else to feed, nobody else to, no other things pulling at your attention and your time. It is a hugely valuable process. I would go into it with an idea, and not waste that time. And usually they'll ask you in the application process, what's your thinking? Why do you want to be here? And so I would definitely have an idea, be thinking about that and ready to say. And usually if it has something to do with them, with that place, that's a plus in your application, how it can be, fitted into the idea. It's this particular, like in Ireland, it was the stone, right? It was some of the stone and the expanses of view of, just the particular landscapes and how those were laid out. And so, I did a lot of work with that the first time I was there. So yeah, long answer again.
They're all good though. Do you always do sketches to start your work?
Sketch. It's such a sketch. My idea of sure. My idea of a sketch might be 5 marks on the board.
Right.
Right. I have a sketchbook that I carry along with me pretty much everywhere I go, and it's not a big book. It's only about this big. And I find myself sketching in the small, because it's a bit like cropped photos. When I take abstract photographs, I'm concentrating on a very small space. Whether the photo ends up being big or small, it is of a small section of something usually. And I found that for me in particular, to sketch small, if the design and the weight of it, the balance, the value, whatever, if it works in the small, it's going to work bigger when I, size it up to whatever size I'm going to be working with. But so yeah, I sketch a lot, but not necessarily, okay, I'm going to sit down to do a sketch of this, and then make it into a mosaic. That's not very often do I do that.
Right.
Recently I did, I just submitted a piece for the SAMA SGAI show, and I started spontaneously on the piece on the board, and then got to a place where I'm like, I kind of had to decide where this is going and what I want to do with this, and I don't want to mess it up by just like winging out there and trying it. So at that juncture, I took a picture of what I had so far, took a picture of the whole board with what I had done so far, printed out 5-6 copies of that, and then took a grease pencil and drew lines from what I already had out into the space to practice a couple of expansion feels, like it could be more angular, or it could be more swoopy. You'll see when you see the piece in the show, but so that I'll do that often. I will I'll take a picture and I'll start drawing, out from what I already have, because I love to start spontaneously, but at some point I've got to get a little organization in it, and so I'll often do that, take pictures and then draw on them some examples of where I want to go, and usually one of those is what I end up doing.
So I think we're coming to the end of wrapping up our fabulous time with Kelley. But before we go, I'm going to put this in front of you, and if you see it, we'll also have it in the chat. But Kelley has generously given a 15% discount off all of her courses. That'll be 13 courses. 14 starting tomorrow with the code Kelley15. It'll be good until tomorrow night. And we will also be announcing the Power of One. We'll just drop into your email box tomorrow. So just take this information, head on over to MAO, all of Kelley's courses, 15% off for the next little over 24 hours.
Yay.
So thank you, Kelley, so much for being here.
Thank you, Tami.
All the time that you spent here, we're really, really thrilled. It was a great time, and we really appreciate it. And what a great,
good to be here.
Good laugh too.
Always.
Thank you.
And no swearing.
I know, how boring.
Oh,
really?
Hurry up and turn this on.
I know. Come on. we're gonna wrap this up now so that Kelley can be Kelley.
Thank you guys all for tuning in, and stay in touch.
Yes.
Show us what you're doing with what you're learning and how you're going. It's so lovely to see everything you're doing on Foundations and Fundamentals or wherever you're posting.
You find us.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much.